pleasure to meet all at last, and today we have ourselves the third out of 10 animals that I've chosen that are in fact regarded as pets. So for 2732, we got mouses. Now, as we know, the mouse, much like the cat and the dog, are seen as pets, although some people might think otherwise with this one, because while it is true that the mouse or the rat, depending on which it may be, the rats are in fact a lot larger than mouses. But either way you look at it, they're deemed as rodents or pests by some people. And while this can be explained by the fact that it's true that sometimes mouses and rats will occasionally go through tunnels, sewer networks, drainage pipes, and other such things that commonly associate with such trashy business, it's important to know that some people are indifferent about this. And it is also true that in some cases, the mouse or the rat are seen as pets. And some people I know have in fact adopted some. I will especially never forget one time in which that in elementary school, I was actually given an assignment to handle a rat in particular. Her name was Roxanne, which nowadays has me mostly thinking about the Freddy Fazbear character, but apart from similarities, because they share the same name, the rat, known as Roxanne in this case, especially like to have a little snack in the form of blueberries. Kind of another thing that we share in common. I like the name Roxanne, and I also am a fan of blueberries. So I especially was able to build a solid relationship with Roxanne for 3 years straight. Kind of incredible that I was able to raise a rat until she grew big and strong. But as we know, by the time I left elementary school and moved on to middle school by 2011, the job had to be handed to someone else. Basically, another third grader that would help raise Roxanne even further until she probably is no longer around. Being that I left elementary school 14 years ago, I'm sure that a lot has happened with her just as much as with anything else. And above all other things considered, in spite of my own experiences with handling a rat, feeding her, having her drink, have her playing around on her little exercise equipment, including a wheel, which we know rats aren't the only creatures that are known to roam around in an exercise wheel. Mouses, guinea pigs, hamsters, they all can use these little wheels to their advantage. But the reason why it's typically dubbed as the mouse wheel is mainly for that reason, that mouses were indeed known for using these wheels as a form of exercise in order to improve their agility and of course their leg strength. After all, the mouse or the rat, they are pretty strong and powerful, and they're also incredible swimmers. Given the fact that they have a unique anatomy, they are able to traverse whatever terrain you can, not just the water, but they even can, believe it or not, use their skeletons sort of like unique articulation. Unlike most of our own skeletons, they don't exactly collapse, much like the rib cage of a rat for instance, as they can fit into some pretty tight spaces. A really small hole that's like a quarter of the size of their body, and they can squeeze into it almost without any effort. That alone is pretty impressive. But then of course, we gotta really talk about the popularity of rats appearing in people's toilets. Yeah, no joke. There has been a prior history, and there's even been a couple of TV shows that have had segments dedicated to mouses and rats from the sewers going up drainage pipes and plumbing until they actually get all the way up to the inside of a toilet bowl, to which they're eventually discovered to the shock of people inside, and then the Terminators are called in. I'm sure Terminex has a lot to talk about in regards to rats appearing in their toilets. So, while all this stuff is its own coherent story, possibly for a future episode of HJN, I will say, my own experiences with the rat or the mouse, as they are pretty similar to each other, Despite one being larger than the other and possibly more better than the other, I will say that both of them still are solid pets to have around. As long as you're not afraid of a rodent such as a mouse or a rat, they certainly won't really do a lot for you. But then again, history, once again, dictates otherwise. After all, the mouse and the rat are infamous for one big pandemic that occurred centuries ago. Basically, at some point in the Middle Ages, in the 13th century in Europe, a third of the entire population was wiped out. And it was because of one infamous disease called the bubonic plague. It was found that rats and mouses were easily able to access a multitude of homes, especially to those of the peasants in that time, and infect them with the disease. This kind of disease would cause a lot of swelling on their bodies, ones that basically looked like half-sized golf balls, and a number of other problems. Fluids would leak out, people would suffocate, and eventually succumb to the disease itself. It was a horrible time to be around back then. One could argue the same about the 90s. But as we know, there has since been a cure and readily available medicine for bubonic plague should it ever show up again. And while it's impossible to have a pandemic of that magnitude from that exact same disease, the fact it's still around is really intriguing. But also the fact that it doesn't harm the reputation of rats and mouses as we know of today, it really goes to show that people have learned to either move on or probably be more naive again. It could be because medicine has been made available since then, or it could be another factor. This or that probably doesn't matter anymore, because ancient history, you can't really change much of it then. But you can do a lot of change nowadays. And it's good that the mouse and the rat have had their reputation restored. Otherwise, I probably would have never handled Roxanne the rat. Well, anyways though, I've talked a lot about the rat and the mouse, and I'm probably going to have a more larger field day with all the other things that commonly associated with pet animals. So if you want to see all that, I got a week's worth of this stuff to talk about, so I'll see you then with the rest of them.